Today, we're going to take a look at some more political shifts. This time, it's going to be in the U.S. Senate. It's going to be from 2018 to 2024. But before we get to that, let's first glance over the final Senate map. And now that we've got Pennsylvania called, here it is. We've got 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. Going into this election, Republicans needed at least one flip to control the Senate. That's if Trump won the White House. He did win it, but the Republicans tacked on 3 additional seats. The 4 flips they had were in West Virginia, Ohio, Montana, and Pennsylvania. There was really no doubt whatsoever about West Virginia, little doubt about Montana, some doubt about Ohio, and a lot of doubt about Pennsylvania. That one pretty much came out of nowhere. The Republicans would have loved to get another flip here. There were 4 other states that were within a 2-point margin. The closest one was in Michigan here. That was under a half a point for Slotkin. But next door in Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin was able to narrowly eke out another term. But in the Southwest, it's also Nevada and Arizona. Democrats won those seats, but it was not at all by a convincing margin. So there's no question Republicans are going to view this as a success. That 53rd seat in Pennsylvania gives them a little bit of breathing room. Who knows what's going to happen with moderate Republicans such as Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins. Collins is up for re-election in a couple of years. Plus, we can't forget someone like Chuck Grassley in Iowa. He is in his 90s. And there's also going to be a special election in Florida if Marco Rubio is confirmed as Secretary of State. Plus, we can't forget about Ohio. J.D. Vance, after only 2 years, is going to move on to become vice president. But Governor Mike DeWine is going to have an appointment there, and then there will be a special election in 2026. Usually these Senate majorities are short-lived. Republicans are going to get 2 years, but they're going to be the underdogs in the midterms. It's way too early to speculate, but there could be a blue wave. If there is, Republicans might not be able to hold on for those final 2 years of Trump's term. We'll take a look at that in future videos. But as for the rest of these states, there were 3 other ones that were borderline 10-point margins. Those are going to be New Mexico, New Jersey, and Virginia. Those are about 8 to 10-point wins for the Dems. Just over 10 points at about 11 is going to be in Maryland with Angela Alsobrooks defeating Larry Hogan. The other close one might be here in Nebraska with Deb Fisher defeating independent Dan Osborne. So this is the final map, but if you're curious as to how these states shifted from the last Senate election in 2018, I've got it right here on a super exciting spreadsheet, and I took most of the data from Dave Leap's Atlas of U.S. Presidential Elections. There could still be a little bit of vote trickling in, even though we're more than 2 weeks away from the election. But I think this data is pretty much going to be set. It's possible there's a slight mistake, but let's quickly go through this table. The first column is obviously going to be the state. Then we've got the 2024 Senate winner. The third column is their incumbency status. And we've got the 2018 percentage for the Democrat, followed by the 2018 percentage for the Republican. The next 2 columns are the Senate percentages for the election we just had in 2024. Then we've got the change for the Democratic Senate candidate, followed by the change for the Senate Republican candidate. And the last column is going to be the net change between the 2 parties between the 2 elections. And I've also got some shading here in the last column. There's going to be 3 levels. The lightest colors are going to be under 5 points. The medium colors are going to be 5 to 9.9. And the darkest colors are going to be 10 or more points. So let's go through the first state here. We've got Arizona. The winner here was Ruben Gallego. He was not an incumbent. He's right at about 50%. In 2018, the winning candidate, which was Sinema, she got 50%. The Republican got 47.6. This time, Ruben Gallego got 50.1 and Carrie Lake got 47.7. That's a net gain of 0.1% for Gallego, the Democrat, and also a net gain of 0.1% for Lake, the Republican. So that actually comes out to a net shift of 0 for both sides. Very similar margins there across the board. So that's how this works. Now we can quickly go through the rest of these states. The next state is California, and something to point out here is in 2018, it was actually 2 Democrats in the general election. That was Dianne Feinstein and Kevin De Leon. So there's really no Republican in that race to compare the data to. So we're just going to say that the winner in 2024, Adam Schiff, he gained 4.8% over Dianne Feinstein in 2018. In Connecticut, Chris Murphy, the Democrat, did slightly worse than 2018 by 1.2%. In Delaware, that open seat shifted 5.1% toward the GOP. In Florida, Rick Scott had a big improvement over his 2018 total by 12.6. In Hawaii, Mazie Hirono did 9.6% worse than she did in 2018. In the open seat in Indiana, that had a double-digit shift toward the right at 13.9. In Maine, Angus King is technically an independent, and he runs against both Democrats and Republicans. Given he does caucus with the Democrats, for this sheet, we're going to say he's a Democrat and use those numbers. Either way, not a lot of movement here. It went toward the right by 1.9. In Maryland, that had a huge shift toward the right by 23.7. Massachusetts got redder by 4.9. Michigan also redder by 6.2. Minnesota even redder by 8.4. Mississippi was similar by 7.7, as was Missouri by an even 8. In Montana, John Tester did 3.6 6% worse than he did in 2018, and that was enough for him to lose his seat. In Nebraska in 2024, Deb Fischer's opponent was not a Democrat. That was Dan Osborne. He was technically an independent. Given he was the only major opposition, we're going to use that data anyway. But either way, Deb Fischer drastically did worse than she did last time. That had the biggest blue shift on here of 12.4. In Nevada, Jackie Rosen's seat got redder by 3.3. In the open seat in New Jersey, that also got just a little bit redder by 1.7. In New Mexico, that got a lot redder, but part of that reason is going to be because in 2018, there was a third-party candidate. That was Gary Johnson, the Libertarian. Without him on the ballot this time, Martin Heinrich's margin was narrower by 13.4. New York got significantly redder by 16.6, as did North Dakota by 22.1. Same in Ohio by 15.5, and Pennsylvania by 13.3. Rhode Island just a little bit redder there by 3.3. Tennessee with a big shift toward the right by 18.8. Texas, Ted Cruz outperformed expectations. It got redder by 6%. In the open seat in Utah, without Mitt Romney on the ballot, the seat got slightly bluer by 1%. In Vermont, Bernie Sanders is also technically an independent, but we're going to use his data as a Democrat, and he did 8.9% worse than he did in 2018. In Virginia, Tim Kaine's seat also got redder by an even 7. In Washington, Maria Cantwell defied the trends. She actually improved on her 2018 margin by 1.7. In West Virginia, this was an easy flip and a pickup for the GOP. It was held by Joe Manchin, but since then, it shifted a gigantic 44.3 toward Jim Justice, the Republican. In Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin's run for a third term was narrower by 10.4. And finally, in Wyoming, John Barrasso's margin got redder by 14.1. So those are all the shifts, and if you want to help visualize this data, we can take it all and apply it to a map. If we do that, this is what it's going to look like. The shading here is going to be the same, and don't pay any attention to the number of seats at the top. So what are the takeaways here? Well, it's crystal clear that almost every state shifted toward the right, and most of them went pretty hard in that direction. Only a few states defied that trend and went toward the left. That's going to be California, Washington, Utah, Nebraska, and Arizona pretty much had no change whatsoever. But in every other state, deep red to deep blue, most of them moved significantly toward the Republicans. It was enough for them to flip 4 seats in nearly 5 or more. This time, there was a lot of red movement to the Rust Belt. In 2022, that was exactly where the Republican Party came up short. But this data here is comparing 6 years, and remember that in 2018, that was generally considered a blue wave. Now, even in that blue wave, the Senate Republicans actually gained a couple of seats, but overall, the national environment definitely favored the Democrats. So usually when you compare a wave election to a non-wave election, that's where you're going to see most of the shifts going in one direction. Now, every one of these shifts is not necessarily extremely dramatic. Some of the ones in the Northeast only moved a little bit toward the right, but the general theme here is Republicans had a great night. They would have loved to snag another seat, but I think the Pennsylvania seat is going to be the icing on the cake. Every election is going to be unique, and each individual state might have its own unique nuances as to why it might move in one direction or the other. Sometimes they're very slight, sometimes they're a lot more dramatic, and the shifts in this election do look like they're a lot more dramatic. Who knows what would have happened if some of the candidates were different, or if they changed their messaging, or if more money was sunk into some of these races. Feel free to find any other patterns you'd like, but I'm going to leave it there for now, so let me know in the comments. What do you think about any of these Senate elections? Which couple of states were the most surprising to you? And what do you think about any of these shifts? Why did some of these states move so far in one direction and a few of them moved in the other direction? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.